Having absolutely no control over your future is a scary thing. And trust me, if you're in corporate America, you have less control than you think. Hey, what's up, everybody? My name is Jay Helms, and I'm the founder of this podcast and movement known as the W2 Capitalist. Today, I am joined by Mr. Mike Hambright, the flipping nerd. Mike is a veteran real estate investing entrepreneur that has rehabbed and wholesaled close to 400 houses. 400,000 would be freaking amazing. I don't think you and I'd be talking right now if you had 400,000 transactions under your belt, right? Has built a rental portfolio consuming of single-family properties and an ownership stake in over 35 million of multifamily investments. In addition to his extensive investing experience, he is the founder of flipnerd.com and has produced over 1,500 video podcasts with millions of views and downloads. I will link to that in the show notes so you can take a look at that. But Mike has coached hundreds of real estate investors directly, thousands indirectly, and is a sought-after advisor to many of America's top real estate investors through his Investor Fuel Real Estate Mastermind, which is why I want to talk to him today, a leading organization of over 100 of the nation's leading investors. Additionally, Mike is the co-founder of Investor Machine, a cutting-edge, data-driven lead generation agency for real estate investors, which we're going to talk in today because we were talking before I hit the record button about deal flow and how is the biggest problem for most investors. But Mike is also a husband to Lindsay and father to Jake. Mike, welcome to the show, buddy.
Hey, buddy, that was a mouthful. I'm glad to be here.
Well, I want to make sure that when folks come on the show or folks listening to the show or watching the show, if you're watching on YouTube, is that you have experience, right? I just didn't pick you out of a crowd. I mean, I think I tried to get after you. It took me a while to get you here, right? But we're here, right? And for all those reasons, if you're not watching, if you're just listening, we joined here, we talked for maybe 20 minutes before I hit the record button, which is abnormally long for this kind of thing. And I noticed in the background, Mike's got a couple of awards on his wall that I'm like, oh, I'm going for one of those. We need to talk. And he's been extremely gracious with his time and knowledge already. So yeah, it's truly an honor to have you here for everything that you've accomplished.
I'm excited to be here. I know we've been trying for a while. I think your show slots were like so early. I was like, I'm not in the W2 world anymore. So I roll into the office about 10 a.m.
Yeah. No, that's fair. That's fair. That changed. That availability time slot changed on May 1st when I went when I got kicked out of the W2 world myself due to COVID. So you're right though. Before then, the only time I recorded podcasts, and I'm severely thankful for the people who joined me, is somewhere between 5 and 7 a.m.
Yeah,
time.
I remember seeing that. I was like, I think your calendar is wrong. Like,
yeah,
no,
I get that a lot.
Okay, well.
No, if you want to be on, come on here. So, but yeah, definitely loosen those up. And like you, I'm a big fan of the Miracle Morning concept.
Yep.
And having a W-2 and trying to invest in real estate, it was imperative that I guide up before the rest of the house, right? Because otherwise I wouldn't get anything done. I'd go to work and then I'd come back after work, be just exhausted, not really wanting to do anything else, but lay on the floor and let the kids jump on me and all this good stuff. And so I had to find those couple of hours a day where I could focus on real estate. And it was definitely between 5 and 7 a.m. So now that I've transitioned to that, I'm getting closer to you, right? I don't sleep till 10 a.m., but I definitely sleep later.
I don't sleep. Yeah, just to be fair, I don't sleep until 10 a.m.
You roll into the office at 10 a.m.
Yeah, I mean, I just kind of take my time. I get up, I have coffee with my wife. We go out and grab coffee somewhere every morning. We just have kind of a routine, and so yeah.
So I've matter of fact, there's a lot of people in the Facebook group who have called me out. Hey, where are the 5 a.m. roll calls, that I used to do and stuff like that. I was like, well, I'm not up.
Yeah.
But, you and I have something in common. We transitioned out of the W-2 world, right? From being an employee to running our own businesses or, real estate investing and as part of that. So I want to talk a lot about that today with you. Kind of because you're a little bit further down that road than I am. You definitely have. I really am jealous about those awards on the back of your. I mean, I don't even think I said good morning to you when we jumped on the Zoom call. I was like, dude, are those ClickFunnels awards? I think that was the first thing that came out of my mouth. So I'm sorry about that, Mike.
No, that's
I
cool.
hope you're having a good morning.
No, I'm good. I'm good, buddy.
But let's talk about exiting, let's talk about your story, your backstory on how you transitioned out of being an employee for somebody else.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, if I go back a little further than that, I grew up in a very blue collar family, working class, and developed a great work ethic there. But I was I was the first person in my family to go to college and later went on to grad school. I just didn't really have a mentor. I didn't have somebody to follow to say, this is the path out of kind of the blue collar life. Right. I mean, and so there was enough wisdom there to know like I should go to college to kind of recreate myself or learn a new skill. Right. And so, which I did. So I got a degree in finance, went into banking. I grew up in Illinois. So I lived in Chicago and worked for a massive bank, but, was there for a little while and just kind of quickly thought, is this all there is? Like, is this really what this is all about? So jumped around to a couple different jobs, found my way down to Dallas, Texas area, which is where I live now. And got another job here, and it was a financial analyst job, kind of the same thing. It's just like, is this all there is? At that job, there were like 4 analysts, 2 managers, 1 director. Like I could see the next like 10 or 15 years of my career, like within like 50 feet of where I sat, my cubicle, right? And I was like, this can't be it, right? And
You're gonna get the cubicle with the better view. That was your next step, right?
Yeah, the bigger cubicle. Yeah. Instead of 8x8, it was 10x10. So it was kind of just looking at like, is this really all there is? And I wanted to kind of recreate myself again, so I decided to go back to grad school. I thought I needed more formal education to do that. And then I got out. When I got out, it was I went into grad school. I hate to like date myself now, but went into grad school 2001, and it was a 2-year full-time program. And about a month in, not even a month, it was probably like 2 weeks into the program, September 11th happened, and the economy just shifted, right? So I was there for 2 years, but during that whole time, the economy was in a downturn. So when I got out, it was hard to find a job, and but I eventually did, and I found a job that was, honestly, I would have said it was my dream job. People were envious of my job. I was flying around on corporate jets because working for the CEO of a $5 billion company directly as a new grad school student. Or graduate, kind of unheard of, really cool stuff. And
Where'd you go to grad school, by the way?
UT in Austin, University of Texas, Austin. MBA program. So, and I met my wife there too. So that was one of the best things that happened there for sure. And we work together side by side now. So not side by side, but sometimes side by side. But anyway, we work together.
Where is she? Is she not supposed to be here with you?
Yeah.
She might be like my wife, and she's completely.
She's my son is 13 years old. His I don't know when this is coming out, but anyway, his school is starting this week, so we're kind of dealing with him going to school, but they're making it start virtually, even though we're kind of choosing to not go virtually. But they're like, you don't get a choice for the first couple weeks here. So anyway, so I had this awesome job. Like I could do anything I wanted if it made sense, and I had a very supportive boss, and he made the decisions for a company with 35,000 employees. And I was kind of like his apprentice, if you will, so it was cool. And I worked there for about 3 years, and then he got fired. It was like a political meltdown situation. And I was next. So they're kind of like, hey, that young kid that says whatever the hell he wants, like he's going to go too. And so that's what happened is I got fired, like totally unexpectedly. I'm going like literally at one point he's sending me to like executive education at Ivy League schools, and I'm like flying around the world, literally around the world doing stuff pretty amazing, to like HR is taking away my name tag, my security badge, and pushing a box of my shit to my car. It's just like, holy cow, just a slap in the face, right?
Yeah.
Really a blow to my ego, because that was like a dream job. And then I went to another company that I was there for about 18 months, flying high. It was more of a startup, but it was flying really high. And then they filed for bankruptcy. And at that point, my wife had left her job as a consultant. She was making more money than I was. My job was cooler, but I mean, she was making more money for sure. And then my son, she we actually moved to Washington, D.C. for this second job. So she left her job as a consultant to support me, which even though she was making good money, she hated it. I mean, she was, back to the, I guess, W-2 speak.
Yeah.
She was a consultant and she basically traveled 100%. And
I would hate that too.
she would live so much so, I don't know many people that have been in this situation. She would pack her bags and take them to work in case she had to travel that day. They only bought one-way tickets everywhere they went because they might have to fly somewhere else before they come back home. And so it was a unique role, but it was just kind of hard living, right? But we were young and didn't have kids at that point, so we just kind of made it work. And anyway, she had left her job to support me, and also because she hated it.
Yeah.
Then we ended up getting pregnant, and so my son was born like 2 months before I left this second job. So they filed for bankruptcy, but I left because I knew the writing was on the wall. Like,
you knew it was coming. Yeah.
Yeah. And so, at that point I was like, do I go back to corporate America? We moved back to Dallas actually, because we still had our house here. Do we go back to corporate America? Or at that point I knew enough to know that I work really, really hard. I've always worked hard. Right now it's been for other people, and I seemingly have no control over my future unless I go do something myself. And that was kind of the beginning of me jumping into real estate. Yeah.
So this time where you're flying around the corporate jet, working for these gigantic companies, right? And you're next in line to take over, kind of thing. You had never really, have you ever thought about real estate investing, or when did that kind of, cause I can pinpoint the day, cause I had bought and sold a few homes, but the day where I count as, okay, now we're active real estate investors, I feel like we know what we're doing, was the very first foreclosure that we bought. And, we fixed it up, got a tenant in there, and right then and there we caught the bug, right? I was like, okay, if I'm addicted to anything, it's no longer video games. It's now going to be buying real estate, right?
Yeah.
Well, when did that hit for you? Like, have you done any of that?
I'll say when I left this other job, I tried to start another company, like an online retail company. It was like an affiliate business. And that I probably did that for 6 months or so, burned through a bunch of savings. Unfortunately, one of those things where you get in 6 months and you're like, man, I could have done, in hindsight, I could have done this in 6 days, let alone 6 months. But, I just didn't know. I didn't have that structure. Right. And so, and then eventually it was like, I need to do something that's bigger because, the truth is we made good money in corporate America. I couldn't really dabble. I had to get serious. So I'll say I'd always had an interest in real estate investing, but I didn't really know what that was. Like, I knew some people that had rental properties.
Gotcha.
And that's about all I knew. And what I really knew was more of the academic version of like, oh, you have a tenant and make money every month. Like, there's obviously a lot more drama than that. Right. But it was pretty academic. And honestly, when I first started, I didn't, like, conceptually, I understand wholesaling. I work for several retailers, and you buy it wholesale and you sell it retail. Like, I get that, but I didn't really understand the model in real estate. So my primary interest is in rehabbing. And I had, I'm dating myself once again, because when I grew up, there wasn't like Flip This House and all this stuff. I mean, when I was younger, but there was the show called This Old House, which was like fixing stuff up. Right.
Yep.
And so I'd always been interested in that. My dad was pretty handy with stuff, even though he never owned any rental properties and like that.
Yeah.
But, so there was a kernel there, right? But there wasn't really a business yet.
Yeah. What are you talking about? I saw this hilarious meme yesterday. It's talking about, because our parents, we're close in age, and our parents would probably, or my dad at least, said, I used to walk uphill both ways to school, right, in the snow with no shoes on, right? Yeah. And I saw one the other day about how now our generation can tell our kids that we during COVID that we wiped our backside in the front yard because there was no toilet paper and there was snow on the ground or something like that. I was like, this is kind of the generation we're in, right? Our parents were not didn't have enough money to buy shoes, and they made this elaborate story, and here we are with no toilet paper because of whatever's going on. So that's funny. That's funny. You're not that old. You keep saying you're dating yourself. I'm right there with you, man.
A couple young guys here.
Yeah. That's of course my wife reminds me, well, you're not that young. Thanks, honey. So so you've been through the corporate world, right? You had an amazing job, some amazing experiences. I picked up on a comment you mentioned earlier about HR. HR was wheeling your stuff out to your car, but you were next on the firing list because you would say whatever was on your mind, right? And
Yeah.
I spent a lot of time in the HR office myself. Probably doesn't shock a whole lot of people, but it's just so like I do not like being. And I've even loosened up more since I've left the W2 because I felt like if somebody heard the podcast and I said something that wasn't PC, right, then they were going to use that to get rid of me. Apparently, I did enough of that on my own to put me on the short list when COVID happened. And but it's just so funny how I no longer have what I consider a corporate filter. Like it went away pretty easily. And I was talking to my wife about this because, yeah, I've noticed you loosened up, and I'm so sorry that we're all going to have to deal with that from now on.
Yeah.
But did you
Well,
have
the
the same
truth is like,
experience or because
yeah, the truth is what a burden to have to be worried about what you say and not be able to share your opinion. I mean, it's one thing to like
yeah,
not go out and offend everybody, right? But it's another thing
yeah,
to be like
yeah,
speak your mind, right? So yeah, I mean, I think you know, at the end of the day, like I've got a bunch of education and everything I did in corporate America was always to try to get somebody to want me, to pay
yeah,
me, right? It's like I have to conform to who you want me to be to keep my job and hopefully move ahead.
yeah.
And now it's like,
When chances are you were just going to get a little bit bigger cubicle, right?
right. Yeah.
If you got a raise.
Yeah. Or
Uh,
get involved in some political shit myself. And,
yeah,
hopefully, somebody else, I went out over somebody else. And so, it's a
yeah,
very different mindset now to be like, hey, I'm in a community where everybody wins. If we all play the
yeah,
game, we all work hard, we all help each other, and we all win, right?
yeah,
There doesn't have to be winners and losers. And in corporate America, there does, because there's a finite number. If you're vying for the next position and there's 5 people vying for it, like there's
yeah,
gonna be 4 losers.
yeah, yeah. And talking about offending people and being careful what you say, it, people are so offended so easily these days. You
Yeah.
can say, like, I can say, hey, you're drinking a bottle of water, like, and what's
That'll
on the
hurt
bottom,
somebody's feelings.
that'll
Yeah.
hurt somebody's feelings because it's not in a recyclable container or something like that,
Yeah.
and that'll be reported.
I'm gonna
And
put this sucker in a landfill, even, to be honest with
yeah,
you.
that's good stuff. But yeah, so it's amazing. I made this comment the other day that I think corporate America is on a downturn of, we talk about our age, right? We were taught about the industrial revolution and all this that happened before we were born. And I feel like we're living in times now where uh, someday our kids or maybe our grandkids are going to be taught about the corporate America revolution, where corporate America really no longer exists because of there is no loyalty. They don't proactively reward loyalty, right? Or at least in my experience, they didn't. And you had to threaten to leave before they would ever consider to give you a financial compensation raise, right? And then, like you said, it's just so cutthroat. And I think millennials, and I did a episode on this not too long ago on YouTube, that I think millennials are the smartest generation out there because they kind of put their foot down as a generation, said, no, we're not going to work in that environment for such small dollars, right? And a lot of people disagree with me, but I'm like, holistically, just look at it. I'm not talking about the millennials who are offended by everything and want everything handed to them. I'm talking about the folks who are not doing what you and I did initially, right?
Yeah.
It's just incredible. So
Yeah, I think that's one of the things I hope to instill in my son, who just turned 13, is like there's a lot of ways to make money. You don't have to follow the
yeah,
traditional kind of ladder climbing path, but you do have to add value. You have to add value for people to be willing to pay you
yeah.
wherever you're at, right? And
Well,
so it's less about, can I trick somebody, not trick, but can I look good on paper and all this stuff, like as a candidate, versus can I add value and make a respectable income from that.
yeah,
Um,
yeah. So you and I both went to college, right? We both did some graduate school work. You have an MBA, I have an MBA. We both have kids. Mine are a little bit younger, but because I got started later than you did. Do you push your kid to go to school, to go to college?
College, I struggle with that. I don't, I
Yeah.
mean, my wife, has, like on a resume wise, like education looks really good too. So, and we've always thought education is an important part. So, I mean, I guess it's formal education versus other education, right? So,
Right.
yeah, I don't know. I mean, I do believe that a lot of people go get BS degrees, right? Like, just it's a waste of,
Not bachelor's of science, a bullshit
yeah,
degree. Yeah.
no bullshit, yeah. And I mean, I just think if you, but at the same time, I don't think that you necessarily know what you want to do. So, I would definitely would be supportive of him if he wanted to do that. If he knew like, hey, I really want to go do this thing,
Yeah.
we would totally be supportive of that. Um, so I don't know. We struggle with that. We're like, well, do we force him to go? I don't think we're going to
Yeah.
force him.
Yeah. We recently, we're not wrapping up. We're kind of in the middle of hiring a certified financial planner. In my mind, we've already hired him. Basically, we're talking about taking on a whole life insurance policy. It's one of those bank on yourself kind of concepts that we can
Yep.
use to pay for college. And so, all of our kids are 6 and under. So we really haven't talked about college yet, and I have my viewpoints on it. My wife has her viewpoints on it. And, so one of the things in the interviewing process was, let's talk about college for your kids. Like, no, let's not. I mean, we don't need to plan on providing funds for our kids to go to college. And my wife's like, what? She and I both have college degrees, and they've helped us out a lot. But it just seems like now that I've woken up to kind of that institutionalized system, that I don't want our kids to get. So we made a compromise. It's like, look, if they want to go to college, they're going to go to have a good time, and they're going to focus
Yeah,
on a
I think there's
business degree, right?
yeah, I didn't say that, but I kind of think the same thing. Like, I think a general business degree, something, or finance or accounting, something that's transferable. I mean,
Yeah.
that's one, even if you're still in corporate America and you want to stay in corporate America, as an entrepreneur, you have to continuously add value, right? And so,
Yeah.
your skill set or what you offer has to be in demand, or you'll make zero, like literally. And you should think about that when you're in corporate America too. Like, I mean, there's so many people that I know that lost like an IT job, for example, and the stuff they did in IT was specific to that one company. It's just not transferable to somebody else. So
Yeah.
how can you constantly be getting a skill set that's transferable to another company or doing your own thing? Like, you need to stay relevant, right? And so,
Yeah.
but yeah, I think for my son, like at a minimum, like even though my wife went to a fancy school, we could afford sending him wherever.
What's a fancy
But
school?
I mean, she went to Georgetown. So, but schools
Okay.
like that are like 60 or 70,000 a year now. It's crazy, right?
At least.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
so, and I did some Ivy League stuff like executive education, and it's like, it looks good. I think the network there is probably more valuable than what you learn there, like, education wise. But there's really no reason why he couldn't go to a state school and just use that opportunity to learn more about. I did too.
Yeah.
Learn more about yourself, and I think there's a big
Yeah.
learning process of learning to be on your own, learning to be self-sufficient,
Yeah.
and stuff like that. So I'm not opposed to it at all, but we're not going to send them to an Ivy League school to F around,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
get a degree in underwater basket weaving or something.
I don't know, man. That's life skills, right? That's all right. So let's get back to your, again, I warned you before we hit record that I chase rabbits sometimes, and that's definitely one of them. But talk about transitioning from a job to scaling your business, right? And this is for the listener. This is more self-serving for me, but I want to, not just. Where I was going to go with that is I want to know how I get those 2 awards on my back of my wall. But let's not go there. Let's talk about flipping, right? So, I've never flipped a house before. We've done some live-in flips that we've lived in for a few years. Like, I consider the one we're in now as a live-in flip. And if we could sell it tomorrow, my wife would. And I'm like, oh, man, I love this house. I did the wrong thing as an investor is I fell in love with, an asset. Which I do consider this an asset. If we sold it today, it would generate us a lot of money. But that aside, I have never flipped a house before. I work a W-2. How do I find time to flip a house? What are some of the first things that I need to do?
And flipping meaning like fix and flip, like
Fix and
rehab.
flip. Yep.
Yeah. I mean, that's one of the challenges that you have when you're small or when you're getting started is you're not important to contractors, let's say.
Yeah.
So once you become where you're a source of repeat business for other people, then you're important to them and they're obviously important to you. You can build those reciprocal relationships, right? But until then, it's just like you just have to lean on other people in your community, other recommendations of who to use for different things.
Yeah.
But the truth is in the fix and flipping world, and we've rehabbed hundreds of properties. Um, that's the easy part. I mean, it's the easy part. I say that because I'm not doing the work. I'm outsourcing it. The harder part is finding deals. That's
Yeah.
always the hardest part of this business is finding a good deal. And so, in terms of people that maybe want to transition out of a job into being a full-time real estate investor, whatever that means for you, full-time could mean you do a deal a month, or it could mean you do 10 deals a month, right? But
Right.
you start, no matter where you're at, you start with one a month and you try to stair step your way up, right? But I guess everybody listening to this works for different kinds of companies, but if you work for a large company, you know that, they have to find customers, right? They have to find leads basically that turn into sales. Everything is a funnel. So you talk to 20, 30 prospects and it turns into one deal maybe, or whatever
Yeah.
that kind of conversion funnel is for you. But you have to think. So when we left our jobs and we got started in real estate investing, so very quickly we realized that we needed to scale the business for one, because we had to replace a decent income.
Yeah.
And my wife and I were both, we're both like relatively business savvy, but had never like, in a small business, you're doing everything. You're the CEO, but you're scrubbing toilets and chief bottle washer,
Yeah.
light bulb replacer, like everything, right? But we realized we needed that this business really works by leads, generating leads and turning some of those into deals. And so our first full year out of in this business, this is back in 2000. So we started in 2000, summer 2008, but let's say 2009, we flipped like 65 houses.
Nice.
In Dallas, and that just took putting in we trying to operate like we were a big business. So having systems and processes and marketing and sales funnel that brought leads in consistently. And so we kind of, we're able to pull on our corporate background to know that that's how the business works. And we had a few people around us that kind of showed us the way of how to do that. Right. So,
yeah. And it's my biggest problem, right? Whether
yeah.
I'm finding investment properties or if I'm trying to grow the mastermind, in the some of the courses I have, my biggest problem is finding those leads. Like I've realized in the last 3 or 4 months, now it's exploded in the last 3 or 4 months, but as we were talking before I hit the record button, my expectations are really, really high. And I've learned that I know nothing about marketing, right? And I need to lean on other people to do that, which I think is what you're leading up to is the investor machine, which is one of your products and services that you offer, right? That's how the lead generation. So let's talk about that for a minute and talk about what it entails, who is the target audience for, and how it's going to help them, right?
Yeah. So, the way it evolved is I've been coaching for like 11 years and I've coached, helped a lot of people get started. But the single biggest problem always was consistent lead generation, getting leads into the business. And so it was such a problem that eventually we just said, well, let's solve that problem by creating a lead generation agency for people, help them generate leads where they pay for it, but it's kind of a done for you service. And then I've coached long enough and I've done a tremendous amount of newbie coaching, which I actually stopped earlier this year, coincidentally, just right around the time COVID hit, which for me, I've been coaching newbies for a long time, but I found that I get a lot more joy personally out of working with experienced investors. And so our mastermind is for professional investors. In fact, we have 2 groups. One, you have to be doing a minimum of 50 deals a year to be a part of. And just the conversations that are at that level it's like, how do we figure out how to go from 50 or 60 miles an hour to 80, right? Instead of how do we go from 0 to 10?
Yeah.
And so, so everything I do now, for the most part, even though Flip Nerd has thousands of hours of free content, flipnerd.com, and all of our podcasts and all that, my business is really centered around helping experienced real estate investors go from wherever they're at to the next level, double, triple their business versus get started. But yeah, the Investor Machine is our agency. It's not coaching, and we generally, require people to be actively doing at least a deal a month before they come in, just because, we want them to understand. At that point, they understand the value exchange of, if I advertise and spend money on lead generation, leads come in and I get a deal from that. So if I spend $4,000 or $5,000 in advertising and I make 20 or 30, like, okay, how often can I rinse and repeat that? Right.
Yep.
So that's what we do for other people.
Awesome. So the Investor Machine, though, is for people. I want to make sure I understand you correctly, because I was taking notes when you were talking. So sorry about that.
Yeah.
I hate to make you repeat yourself, but it is for people. Let's go back over that again. You've got to at least be doing a deal a month.
We really look at people that do a deal a month, that buy direct from, ideally they buy direct from seller. So they understand how to take those leads and go run the acquisition side, which is talking to sellers, making offers, and getting, one out of every 15 or 20 leads or something like that.
And you're talking specifically about wholesaling, flipping, what kind of asset?
Whatever. Yeah. Our members, we call them members that join our agency model. Let's say it's an agency. It's actually a community. Like, everything we do is community based, and we build, relationships with people. But, their exit strategy, we're agnostic to their exit strategies. They could wholesale, fix and flip, keep them as rentals.
Gotcha.
Most people that are doing decent volume do all the above, right? Just depends on the opportunity, how much cash they have, how much time they have to do.
Yeah. Regardless of the acquisition, they have multiple exit strategies that they can pull from, depending on what happens in the market, or what happens between the time they acquire it to, their partner. If they're working with partners, partner may have something come up and say, well, we can't do this a bird now. We've got a wholesaler. We've got to just flip it, kind of thing.
Yeah. So that's one of the things when you have, for your listeners, when you have an income, when you're a full-time real estate investor, you have to have, it's just like in your job, you get paid and you spend money on your expenses, and you may invest some in real estate, or maybe put money in your IRA or whatever, right? You have some percentage of what you make is for saving and investing, and some of it is to cover your expenses. It's the same thing in your business. You generally can't afford to keep every house as a rental, because you have, I'm right now, I'm in my office, so I have a rent payment on this. I have staff. I have utilities. I have, I have business expenses, right? And that usually includes marketing too. So I have business expenses to cover. So usually that's why, even if people keep a lot of rentals, they usually wholesale or rehab and fix and flip and sell some, because that's covering their overhead. So maybe you buy 3, keep 1, buy 2, keep 1, buy 5, keep 2, whatever it might be.
I've got one right now. It's our last single family property in our portfolio. It was a tax deed auction. We've had to wait a few years to get the title cleared up. Otherwise, because I didn't want to spend a ton of money to clear it up. And now, so this month, the title is going to be, I can file the process and the non-expensive way to get the title clear. And I want to sell it, even though we own it outright. It cash flows amazingly. I mean, it produces somewhere around $400 a month in cash flow since we own it outright. And I'm like, but I kind of want to sell it. I want to get, cause there are a couple different places where I can inject that cash that I think will allow us to scale this business. And that's, so I'm there with you. I need to talk to the wife about it and see what she says. My one, not one and only, but my best and brightest business partner, and see what really happened or what we should do. But you're right. There are different, depending on where you're at in your business, or, in your life and whatever chapter's in, you may have a need to sell something real quick, or you may need to, to have it, to hold on to it. It's just kind of depends. So having multiple exit strategies is key. Right. So,
Yep.
Well, good. That's awesome, man. So that you can find out about that at theinvestormachine.com, right?
That's right.
And I'll make a link to that in the show notes, as well as flipnerd.com and investorfuel.com, which, by the way, I know there's some guys in our local area here in Pensacola who have been to Investor Fuel. Where was your last in-person event?
So our last,
Where was it?
Fort Worth. Yeah. And that was just a couple weeks ago. So
did you have one? Did you ever have one in California?
San Diego. Yeah.
Okay.
A year ago.
Last year?
Pretty much last August. Yeah.
Okay. That's what I'm thinking of. There's some guys in my local area that I saw post some pictures from their and stuff too. So I've been sitting here trying to connect the dots the entire time. When I saw it come up, I was like, why do I know that? And that's it. That's it. Yeah. They went to California to the event. That's awesome. That's awesome. Good stuff. Mike, thank you for being here. Enjoyed chatting with you. I'll be respectful of your time. I know I apologize to the listeners because I took about 20 minutes of Mike's time before we started this interview, but hopefully more to come with him. Hopefully he'll be a return guest for sure. Because he is, one of the things you were talking about earlier is whether you're doing 1 month a deal or when you become full-time, whatever that means. It could be doing 1 month a deal. It could be doing 1 month a deal, one deal a month, or 10 deals a month. It's regardless of whatever that is, that's what you want it for. Right. And I think the important piece there to pick up on is everybody's different. And just because you hear somebody who's, closing $5,000 doors in a year doesn't mean that has to be you. Right. And you got to figure that out, what works for you. And the good thing is there are plenty of different ways to figure that out. Right. So
I think the big thing is we talked a little about transitioning is making sure, like, sometimes I've known people that, they make $80,000 a year in their job and they want to quit and go into real estate. I'm like, well, how much do you want to make in your first year? What's your goal? I'm like, $500,000. Honestly, it's great to have a goal, but
I love
really,
it. Yeah.
Your first goal should be offset your income, right? Because that is financial freedom. If you can offset your income, and you got to keep this in mind, this is where a lot of people leave their job and don't put all the pieces together, is that revenue is not profit, right? You have expenses to cover too. So kind of, just have to figure out what those numbers look like, but figure out, how many deals you'd have to do a year to offset your income and cover your expenses and kind of be net neutral, right? And so it's like for a lot of people that are in corporate America, it depends on your role, obviously, but it's not that many ultimately. So if you're,
it might be one a quarter for some folks, right?
Yeah. If you're wholesaling and you make 10 or 20 grand on average on your deal, depends on what market you're in, obviously, how big the margins typically are, but you can kind of back into like, okay, well, if I stay here, I make this, or if I leave, I need to be able to do, 1 deal a month.
Yeah.
And then for a lot of people, just like your situation and my situation, I had thought about real estate investing for a long time until, like, when I was going to some RIA clubs and weekend workshops and events and stuff like that while I was in corporate America, still just thinking about someday buying rentals, but I never had, my back was never against a wall. Like we were always too comfortable to maybe we'll get into maybe next year or whatever. Right. And then when you get to a point to where you lose a job or you have health issues or you're, God forbid, homeless or living in your car or something. And I know a bunch of people that had success stories and they truly hit bottom, right? So the question is, how do you recreate that pain so that if you want to transition out of corporate America, you do that without having to actually have that pain for real?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. No pain, no change is one of the sales strategies we've learned about over the years, or I've learned about over the years. And you're right. I got that call on last week of April and from a boss, totally unexpected. Right. Because the team that I was running was doing freaking amazing. I mean, we had caps on our compensation, and 4 of the last 6 months we hit them. But me and half my team were let go. Wow. And anyway, long story short, I moped around the house for a couple of days thinking, why me? Why not some other poor asshole who's not contributing as much? But like you said, a lot of it was political. A lot of it was political. And after those few days, I was like, all right, we've been talking about going full-time real estate and with a W-2 capitalist and everything. And I was like, this is it.
Golden opportunity. Yeah.
That's it. Our back was against the wall, and I was like, all right, it's the best thing that's ever happened to me. So, so here's the thing. I was trying to exit, and you wrapped me back around with that statement. No, so I got one more. I got a bunch of questions for you, but the one I want to answer or ask you now is, so you transitioned from corporate America to this life, right? What's next for you? Like, what's the next transition if you've thought that far?
I don't know. So we invest in, we're doing some development deals, self-storage, multifamily, like bigger deals for us, bigger kind of commercial deals, just to move the needle faster. So I struggle with that. I'm at a point where, and I'm not saying this to brag, but I have control. Like, I don't have to work as hard as I do, but I don't really know how to not work hard. And so honestly, I struggle with that a little bit. It's just kind of enjoying life without always having to like break something or build something new.
Yeah.
And so
that's good.
For me, honestly, it's really more of a life of impact now. Like, how do I impact more people and help them win, right? And so that's kind of, it's hard to know exactly what that is, but that's my mission, is to help other people be successful kind of with real estate.
Yeah. Awesome. And another plug for you. I'm just going to say it. You can find out more about that at flipnerd.com, investorfuel.com, or theinvestormachine.com. Before we get out of here, I do have one more question for you, because we're all, everybody has their opinion and has their crystal ball about where the market's going, because it's been extremely hot it doesn't matter, we're talking about the U.S. market. I know real estate is very specific to your local area, right, and where you invest, but as a whole, as a country, where do you think we're headed with all this COVID stuff and everything that's going on politically and everything? Where is the real estate market headed in the next 6 to 12 months?
Man, here's the truth. I have no idea. I remember 5 years ago about putting on my economist hat and talking to some other friends of mine that are really smart, and we're like, in the next 12 months, the market's going to take a downturn. Of course, that never happened. So I really don't know. But here's what I do know is that the way that we buy houses, we buy from people in distress situations. It could be financial distress. I think COVID is feeding that monster for sure. We haven't seen it yet, but it's coming. And then we buy from people in difficult life situations: death, divorce, inheritance, problem rentals, all those things. And those things don't stop, when presidents change hands or when the economy changes, or, they just don't stop. Like, that's just life, right? And so we deal with the type of thing that is going to persist forever, right? And so if you buy right and you don't try to time the market and just try to add value, that there's always an opportunity to do what we do.
Awesome. Mike, thank you for being here today. I love that answer, by the way. It feeds back into you just wanting to help other people out, right? In whatever the situation may be. But thank you for being here today. Thank you for the knowledge you dropped on us. I got several things I want to follow up with you on. So hopefully this will not be the last time you and I chat. And see how I can help you out, right?
Awesome.
All right, Mike. Thanks so much.
Yeah, thanks for the opportunity. Take care.
Hey, what's up, everybody? So we just finished up with Mike Hambright of flipnerd.com. I hope you enjoyed it. I would love to hear from you in the comments below. It's one of the things we get to do here on YouTube, is that we get to interact a little bit versus if you're just listening on the podcast. So what was the most beneficial thing that you heard in today's episode? Drop me a note in the comments below. And if you could, give me a thumbs up if you enjoyed anything at all in this video. But before we get out of here, I want to talk to you about, you heard me mention a couple of times in this episode about the mastermind I run. So you may or may not know that I do host a mastermind for investors of all niches and experience levels. Now, currently at the time of this recording, I'm running 3 different sessions during the week, and all of those sessions are currently full, but I am looking to open up a 4th session. So if you're interested at all in being virtually surrounded with like-minded people for a few hours each week, then here's the next step for you. Go to w2capitalist.com/quiz and take the test, right? It's going to take you about 5 minutes to complete, and then and you can find the link in the description below. Once you complete that test, I will receive it, and I'll be in communication with you regarding the next step, as long as you pass. I'm just joking. I am looking for a certain score range, and I'm also looking for how you answer some of the questions that are there. So, but next up, I want to see you in this video where I'm joined by Bill Allen of 7 Figure Flipping.